BreachLock is a global leader in continuous attack surface discovery and penetration testing. Since BreachLock was founded, they are adding over 50 new customers every month. They have discovered over 1 million reported vulnerabilities and performed more than 20,000 pen testing engagements, including pen tests for over 15,000 web applications, 8,000 mobile apps, more than 100,000 APIs, over 10,000 cloud security audits, and over 200,000 network endpoints. They test your entire attack surface and help you mitigate your next cyber breach before it occurs. Know your risk. Contact BreachLock today. Visit securityweekly.com/BreachLock. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Quick announcement before we get started. Get ready for an electrifying experience at the 15th annual Identiverse. Join 3,000 plus identity professionals at the Aria Resort and Casino in Vegas on May 28th through the 31st, 2024. 4 days packed with dynamic learning and collaboration. Don't miss out on keynote speakers, including Denis De Fiore. Aha, I got it this time. CSIO of United Airlines, Tucker Bryant, entrepreneur and former Googler, George Roberts, Director of Identity and Access Engineering at McDonald's, and many more. As a community member, you receive 25% off your Identiverse 2024 tickets using the code IDV24-SW25. Register today at securityweekly.com/IDV 2024. To my left is Mr. Larry Pesce. Hello there, Mr. Larry Pesce. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a week.
It has been.
It's been a long week.
It's about a half a week.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's Wednesday all day.
Yep. Oh, damn it.
Mr. Bill Swearingen is here with us. Bill, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Just got back from going fishing.
Yeah.
How was the concert, Bill?
It's doing great.
Awesome. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. And just make sure that if you're being called Shirley by your iPhone, that Siri is in an airplane mode.
There you go. Miss Mandy Logan, a.k.a. Jim, is here with us. Welcome,
hey.
Jim.
Hey, what's up?
Mandy is in rare form tonight.
And to make it even better, I know Mandy's in her office, but I could only see part of the door handle behind her, and I thought it was a towel bar. I'm like, why is she in the bathroom?
That would just be par for the course.
That would be.
Why is Jim in the bathroom?
Why is Jim? We've now just gone to straight up recording from the bathroom.
For those listening to the audio version, we just want to point out that Mandy has on a baseball cap and sunglasses for some undisclosed reason, and we're just going to go with it. Okay, no explanation needed. We're going with it.
Well, I will explain these glasses just a bit because for those who are listening, they are actually real tree like safety glasses.
Oh yeah,
but
Safety third.
It just keeps getting better. I swear to God.
I don't know if I can demonstrate this. Do you see how they actually have everything is blacked out except one tiny line? Right. Yeah. So they are made. They're actually ADHD or brain injury glasses. And the only reason I have the ones that look like this is because these were on clearance.
Right.
Some unknown reason. Instead of the fancy ones that actually look.
I thought those were like magnifiers so you can tie your fishing line.
They are absolutely. I feel like, I'm out. I should be. I need some solo cups.
What is your favorite? What is your favorite bass fishing lure? Right? We're talking top water. We're talking worms, crawdads.
Honestly, you got to go bread. Like
I'm a big bass fisherman.
Fireballs.
Myself.
You got to go fireballs. You go some super bait. Get yourself a little bread and a piece of corn. You get your niblets corn.
Good Lord.
Good Lord. I think that's a good segue into D-Link.
Speaking of niblets of corn.
Yes, I think it is.
Speaking of niblets of corn and D-Linkleberries, what?
D-Linkleberries, yeah.
D-Linkleberries.
Lee, why don't you lead us in with your D-Link story?
Okay, I'll get down to my D-Link story is basically there's a couple of flaws with the D-Link DIR 600 and the 605 devices that have no fixes because they're end-of-life devices. So, and of course, they made the NIST-KEV, known exploited vulnerability catalog, with due dates of like June 10th. and there's
Now
no
hold on.
patch.
I
so
want to
that
hone in
means-
on the due date for a moment, Lee. What is that due
Please.
date? Is that for U.S. federal agencies time frame
Yeah,
to
that's
remediate?
cabinet level agencies have a due date of 6/10 to either patch it or decommission the device. And
I just want
for
to
the
dig
rest
a
of
little
us-
further on that one and just
Yeah.
think about U.S. federal agencies that have D-Link DIR 600 or 605 routers.
Those are, I
deployed.
thought they were NASs.
Are those
They're
no,
NASs, but
are they NASs? Okay.
Either way.
But either way, isn't that kind of? I mean, who's working on the cheap here? But
Yeah.
plus, those don't come from the big three, right?
It's definitely not a Synology, which is what I recommend. And some people have bad luck ordering other kinds of gear that's not Synology. We had
Well,
bad
it
experiences.
looks like they are
with,
routers.
Oh yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say the DAR 600 and 605 are routers. Though my story on a D-Link is specific to a NAS device,
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
which is just further evidence that anything from D-Link will have heinous vulnerabilities in it. Which is again kind of shocking that, and it's also like consumer level gear, definitely not enterprise level gear. I mean, this is someone going to Best Buy going, we need a router or a NAS device, so let's put it in the network, which I guess happens, huh?
Well, I'm curious on this story. Like, are these vulnerabilities like on the WAN interface, or are these on the LAN interface?
I believe they
Nobody
are.
knows.
No, I want to say there's so many D-Link vulnerabilities built that they all kind of blur together.
Mhm.
But if I remember, contained cross-site request forgery that allows attackers to change configuration.
Yep. By
and-
hijacking an administrator's session.
Yep.
So arguably inside, but I think you can put the admin interface on the external if you're
Mhm.
stupid. It takes
Yeah.
work.
Information
takes work.
disclosure that let attackers obtain a username and
If
password
you're-
by forging a post request to
Same
a PHP page.
same thing. So internal,
Yep.
arguably.
I mean, yeah, and the fact that this is all being actively exploited, it's like, hello.
Yes.
Exploits from 2014. Hooray.
I actually talked to my neighbor about why he exposed his router management interface to the internet. And it turned out he has a company he's hired to help take care of that because he's out of town a lot. And so I encouraged him to make sure they had it locked down so only they could do it.
So, Lee, I'm curious.
I'm
how
sure
were
he's
you
got
aware?
it locked down to a class A. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, all
Yeah.
of Amazon's all of Amazon's IP space, right?
I mean, that is.
Yeah, of
I would
course,
consider
but-
that restricted, just not restricted very well.
How did you know your neighbor's admin interface was turned on, Lee?
I was doing something and I said, "What the hell, dude? Did you just say happened?"
I was doing something.
I was doing something.
It was like
just
a year
stumbled
ago.
across it, Bill.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
on
no,
the
no,
entire
it was like a
internet, I
year
just
ago. I
happened to
was helping
stumble on
him
my
in his
neighbor's
garage
WAN
doing
interface.
something, and I said, this should get fixed. He says, well, these guys will reach and blah blah blah, and I'm like, say what? Roll that back again.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Yeah. I will vouch for that company's physical installations. They did a beautiful job of installing his system.
Mm.
It would definitely make any of us proud. I mean, he's got his 3 or 4 APs up in the attic with the concentrator right where it needs to be, and
The use of D-Link is
getting
still
good
questionable.
performance. I have a feeling that this might be Ubiquity, not D-Link stuff that he's got, but he's still got the network the management interface exposed to the internet.
I thought you said he had D-Link.
No, I was just saying he did the management exposure thing, and I'm like,
which is kind of weird because with Ubiquity, it's all like cloud-based. Anyway,
well,
we'll debug your neighbor's security.
Yeah,
we're giving your neighbor free security.
Don't make me go
assessment
get
now.
the key and dive into
Yeah.
his rack. Yeah,
You just go ahead and
but did I mention I have physical access?
Mm-hmm.
Game over,
did
man.
I mean, D-Link has just had a long history of vulnerabilities. I classify them as, if I do get something from D-Link, it's for security research purposes.
Yep.
It's not for something to deploy in my network. And
well, I guess there goes their sponsorship.
I know, like now I'm knocking D-Link, but I don't know. They've had a lot of heinous vulnerabilities, and which is fine, right? Like if you're gonna have a lot of vulnerabilities and you fix them, that's fine. But D-Link tends to decommission the routers, or not decommission, end support for them.
Yep.
And then not issue fixes for the vulnerabilities because, well, that firmware is no longer under support, which means the vulnerabilities live forever. As with their NAS devices, so much so, GitHub user Alias K, I buy this person a beer, created a script, a Python script called Dinkleberry, which is just the best name ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And it just fires on all cylinders for me, right?
I know
So
Shim Shady was pretty good.
Shimshi, that was my boss
Yeah,
at Eclipsium. Yeah.
that was pretty good.
Props to Ariella at Eclipsium. She came up with that name, not me. And a lot of people will credit me. I'm like, no. That was Ariella.
Yeah, I was trying to credit you there. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. But this tool, it's an exploit. It uses the exploit to patch the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Which is just awesome. Now there's 2 vulnerabilities here, and I haven't like dug in enough because I found this at like the 11th hour today, because there's a command injection, I believe, in the system call that it's patching. But there's also creds, like backdoor credentials stored on the device. So I'm not sure if it's remediating that vulnerability or not. Of course, the name is amazing. The description and the disclaimer, like clearly from the name, you kind of get the hint that this, Alias K has a sense of humor. And Alias K says, look, disclaimer. It's like, I'm not responsible if your device stops working, you lose data stored on the NAS, starting a fire, or the TA who was happily exploiting this, your device being upset. Yep, right. TA being threat actor.
Yep. Some of the other ones in there, besides all these insane system calls, which are the root of the problem here, there's more buffer overflows than you can poke a stick at, and I can poke a lot of sticks.
I can poke a lot of sticks. I read that earlier too. I was like, I have never thought of saying that, but yeah, I poke a lot of sticks. I also like how this is hilariously insecure, but your device is already hilariously insecure, so may as well take the convenient shell.
Right? Like he put an option in there, like just with the telnet command, you can just start a telnet session on it. This is just, oh my
exploit,
God.
Get telnet, or exploit and fix it or something.
So this is so is he fixing the hard-coded credential vulnerability or the command injection vulnerability?
The command injection for sure. But I'm not sure if the hard-coded credentials are fixed. And it's pretty well-coded Python. I was perusing through the source code, mostly looking to see if he made any comments, because those would probably be also equally as hilarious as his README file. But it looks like he just patches one vulnerability, singular. So, but it's pretty well coded Python. Like he's got classes in here and everything. It's actually pretty decent Python. He makes references that like that area of the code, some of the CGIs, I believe, inside of it had so many vulnerabilities that he was like, it needs to be completely rewritten. Like there's no way. There's so many references to the vulnerable system call.
Yep. So I love in the analysis stuff in the docs directory, the libsmbif.so, there's a note: overflowable, only 4K is allocated, blah 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 blah, leaving plenty for ROP. This is kind of pointless here because we can just system anyways, and other areas of the firmware may use this same function, which we could abuse. Like, why do we even need to do the buffer overflow if we've just got system calls done?
Just awesome. Like bravo. I love it. And afforded us the luxury of saying Dinkleberry on the show, which is always a delight. I mean, I didn't know how much of a delight that was going to be until I encountered this word for the first time in my life, and I was like,
it would have been better
at least 18 times on the show. So Dinkleberry.
It would have been better if it was D-Linkleberry.
Ah, that is good.
Missed opportunities.
Yeah, that is very good.
It's a variation. What you need to do is create a script that it wipes out the backdoor credentials in there and call it D-Linkleberry.
There we go.
Right. Well, so we're not always slamming on D-Link at this moment. I do want to say at RSA, I got this very nice water bottle from LastPass. Had a very, thought it was a very secure lid. it was immediately the first model that spilled all over my car, like all over the seat and everything.
Not good.
Speaking of dingleberries.
Yeah. It breached like that.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly.
No comment.
No comment.
All right. We're going to stay in the IoT realm for a little while. And I got a couple stories. One we had in common we should talk about. And that is the Ars Technica article from who's the author
Kevin
on this
Purdy?
one? Yeah, Kevin Purdy did a great job writing this article, I thought. And it's how I upgraded my water heater and discovered how bad smart home security can be. Welcome to IoT and smart home vulnerabilities, Kevin. There are many to be found.
Because the S in IoT stands for security.
Right. Yes, that is exactly true. So this, it was interesting. So it's a tankless hot water heater, which I have not this model in my house. Mine is like my furnace and my hot water heater all in one. And it looks very similar to this, except I don't have any of the smart stuff on my one at home, which I was kind of upset about because I really wanted the like visibility via some
not
kind of
so
smart,
much right now.
But not so much right now when it comes to security, because it seems like vendors in general in this space just tend to really screw it up. And wait till we get to washing machines and dryers. Hold your horses there. But on the tankless water heater, there's basically a little smart Wi-Fi module that can be installed from the manufacturer. And then from what I gathered from the article, some people reverse engineered that and created their own open source hardware to be able to control it, or an app,
open source app to be able
right.
to enable it on your Echo.
I gotcha. Because the app that they had was called Control R. Was the app from Rinian's official app is Control R. Renai's.
RINNAI.
Yeah, Renai. Control R, and it didn't have like good Google integration and some other things you want, because essentially
it had no integration.
The problem with tankless hot water heaters is, I mean, they work great because you get endless hot water. I mean, you can pay the bill at the end of the day, but you get endless hot water because it's not a tank that's emptying. However, it has to kick in and start heating the water and then push that hot water through the line. So it tends to take a while. Like you wait, I get him on that point. You wait for a while for hot water to come. It's a trade-off, right? But with the app, you can go, I'm going to take a shower. And then 5 minutes before you take a shower, go, hey, prime the pump.
And start heating the water.
Start heating the water, which I was like, oh, that's kind of convenient. I'm like, or I could just turn the shower on and then wait.
And waste water.
And waste water. It's true. Yeah.
Amazon bitch, turn on the water heater.
Yeah, and that's essentially what they were going after.
And or you could then create a schedule. So you get up every morning at 6, and by 6:10 you're going to be in the shower. You can have it do the regen and start heating water at 6 o'clock when your alarm goes
If there ever was a moment for a first world problem, this would be it.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Lee.
By the way, my recirculating pump for my hot water is on a Wemo device with a schedule. I mean, that's
But
this is effectively the same thing. But
the bug was in their API, though, that essentially you just need someone's email address before a certain date in 2022, I believe, before they fixed it. And just with that person's email address, it wasn't checking the API credentials or keys or anything like that. With just the email address, you could interact with the API and affect changes on the device in your home. Now, I'm not sure if it's just code in Rhode Island or what the plumbing codes are, but on my tankless hot water heater, the one that feeds hot water, there is a physical hardware device that will cut off a valve if the water temperature reaches over a certain predetermined. It's like it's built into
it's a safety thing.
It's a safety thing, exactly. I believe that was code in Rhode Island to have that installed, and I forget the temperature, if it's 120 or 140 or something like that. But some whatever the threshold is for scalding versus not scalding, it was at that school. You can program your hot water heater to go hotter, but when it comes out of the pipe, that is a no-go with that device. You can, of course, remove that device if you wanted to, at the risk of burning yourself or an attacker taking over your hot water and changing the temperature. Which, if all you need is someone's email address, really easy, apparently. But they fixed it, and I don't know, the story goes on to talk about other devices and whatnot.
So there is a telltale, though. The hotter the hot water is in the tankless, the lower the flow is. I mean, because that's the trade-off. To get it hotter, it has to flow slower.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
So if you're paying attention, but if it's that hot shower you need to get you from catatonic to functional, you're not going to notice.
Good point.
Am I the only one whose first shower is needed for that?
Could be. A lot of people are into the cold shower thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh, well, okay.
Nope.
Yeah, no go for me too.
Yeah. So
speaking of plumbing and appliances, ding. Oh,
dong.
Lee, your roast is done. Speaking of plumbing and appliances, did you hear about the students who figured out how to hack the laundry machine system? You didn't see this one, Larry? I'm surprised.
I did not see this one.
So my story number 8, 2 students uncovered flaws that allows them to use laundry machines for free. So essentially there's little smart devices and this company manages millions of, I'm assuming washing machines and dryers, obviously, right, that are largely installed on campuses worldwide. And so I think the way it's supposed to work is like you register for an account, you get your app, and I'm not sure what your interaction was or is with the machine, but you tell it like, I want to use this machine, and it talks up to the cloud to your account and it unlocks that machine for you and pulls money from your account. And I thought it was going to be some kind of RFID NFC thing. Like I had that in my head when I was going to read the article. It turns out it's yet another API thing where basically there was no authentication in the API. They could interact with the API and basically turn on any washer or dryer. They also figured out that I believe it was my coworker Nate was telling me that they figured out the checking was done inside the app. So they could change it and then send it up to the API. So they told the API, I have $1 million in my account. And the API, oh, sure, you got $1 million.
Because the app said it did.
Yeah,
because they all checked it at the app.
App said it did, right?
And this is like...
It told the exact story you're about to tell.
I don't know. This wasn't like... This is like web API security 101. Like,
I thought you were going to start with that one time on a pen test, we were able to change, you can change things. And this is not just the pen test you were on that I don't want to say too much, but like any pen tester I talked to that tested an e-commerce site.
We totally just did an e-commerce site and we changed all the prices. Changed all the penny or free. And yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like this is, how long have we been talking about this particular type of attack for since we started this show?
Yeah. But the thing is, the company's response was not to fix the vulnerabilities. It was just to wipe out the $1 million in their account.
Right.
Which I'm like, if they didn't fix the vulnerability, couldn't you just put it back?
Yep.
Which you totally could.
Yeah. But
also,
even
I want to make a note. I'm sorry. I want to make a note here. It literally says that there was over 1 million internet connected laundry machines used by this app. 1 million worldwide.
It's a lot of washers and dryers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dirty underwear.
Wasn't there a further flaw where you could bypass the whole payment thing altogether, so you didn't have to have any money in your account?
Yeah, that's the other. I think that was the first flaw that they discovered was they could just send commands to the API, unlock a machine, and not have to pay.
Yep. He's sitting in the basement laundry room in January when he ran a script from his laptop that instructed the laundry machine to start a cycle despite having no funds in his account.
Well, this is good news because my oldest daughter is going to college this year, so hopefully they have some CSC laundry machines there.
Exactly. I don't care what college you go to; it must have CSC washers.
Right? That many washers.
I don't care what you study. I don't care anything else.
There you go, Billy. Just get an armor with the script, and it's good to go.
And she can her and all of her friends can all have all the free laundry they want.
That's right.
No, wait.
What we'll do. We'll
entrepreneurial spirit.
She's
got.
I say that's.
Got to give me a couple of bucks. You want to unlock that laundry machine?
See, now you start bordering on the illegal part, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, my friend Bob.
Right.
That was my friend Bob. That's what Bob would do.
If you're going to commit crimes, you might as well go all the way, right? Like Yeah, charge
That's
for
half
it too.
committing crime, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Can she copyright the script?
She can
And then-
I
just
mean-
she can get a crypto wallet, and they can add funds to a crypto wallet.
There you go. Perfect.
Seems like if you wrote a script automatically that loaded your account with, I don't know, say $20 every few weeks, nobody would know.
No one would probably. Yeah, you're right.
No
Absolutely
one would
right.
never
Now we're
Nobody
just
would
telling people how to
know.
commit crime and not get
Uh-huh.
caught.
Well, I would want to verify that actually worked, wouldn't you?
And
you
here
gotta
you thought it was
understand the
just a
vulnerability,
bunch of old dudes smoking cigars talking about the good old days.
you know.
You get practical advice on the show, how to commit crimes and not get caught, which you shouldn't do. I'm not saying. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm
You
just
shouldn't do
thinking
that.
Bill's
Like, don't do
daughter
that.
needs a paper. She needs to
Don't do
write up a
that.
paper about this to get some credit in school. I mean, come on,
Well,
That's right.
and
score some points while she's a freshman, right?
certain of our hacker fam, I wouldn't mind encouraging laundry washing too.
You know,
Research is
great point,
important.
man.
Ouch.
And the water heater and the whole like having warm water. If
I
that's
mean,
what you
yeah,
need.
Yeah, showering, doing laundry. These
Showering.
are basic hygiene things are important.
I mean, I
You're
think
right.
Josh's kids could probably use this right about now, given
Yeah.
the reason Josh isn't here on the show.
Absolutely. Their
Wait,
whole
why is
family.
Josh not here on the show? I missed that.
One of the kids apparently has explosive diarrhea,
Ah,
hence the need for laundry.
yes.
And warm
Ooh.
water.
Yes.
But they went to. So I just want to point out the researchers just didn't like reach out to the company and like not get a response or get like a cagey response. They weren't happy with the response, so they went through US CERT and went through all the proper channels to try and get CSE to fix these vulnerabilities, and no such luck. So they did all they could. I mean, they went above and beyond. I mean, like, okay, let's go to US CERT, right? Like, if Bill would have found these vulnerabilities, to be like, I don't know, I sent him an email, they didn't fix it. Oh well.
Well,
Free
time to
laundry for
publish-
everyone.
Yeah, time to publish the blog post.
That's it. Oh boy. Do we have another IoT related story? We must. Oh yeah, millions of IoT devices are vulnerable after a researcher uncovers flaws in ThruTech Calais platform. Am I saying that right? Calais platform, KALAY.
Sure.
ThruTech Calais platform.
Yeah.
What I gathered from
Let's
this.
go with Calais.
Yeah,
What's-
Calais. So
which
what I
story is
gathered
that?
from this was, I got into explaining Larry and I years ago when we were making this transition in terminology from embedded system or embedded device to IoT. All of a sudden, we started seeing this term IoT, and we're like, "What is the Internet of Things?"
And more importantly, it's not just IoT; it's the IoT. Is
The
technical term.
IoT.
The
Yeah, the
IoT.
The Internet of Things.
The Internet of Things is the way I describe it. I believe is the same definition that you have that we agreed upon.
For
when we
the
unpacked it.
IoT, please sign in.
The IoT represents you have a device somewhere, maybe on your network. It talks up to the cloud, and you also have a smartphone and a smartphone app that can either talk to the device and or talk to the cloud, probably both, especially during configuration and setup. And that's what we mean by the Internet of Things.
And I'd also argue cloud
Mhm.
and phone optional, just a web browser
Mhm.
on a network.
Mm-hmm.
Some
I think of it. I think of it as cloud and app, but you know,
because it doesn't always have to be cloud.
right? Oh, it can be a server sitting
Yep.
somewhere on the internet.
Yep. So like we dropped some cameras somewhere today.
Yes.
Those are cloud connected, but you can make them with some firmware updates non-cloud connected, so they record locally. So they're still IoT devices,
right. But you have the option. But when we talk about the communication of device to cloud to smartphone kind of thing, there are, I believe what ThruTech makes is like that stack that you can license and implement in your product. And that stack was found to have vulnerabilities. So anyone that implemented that stack might be the wrong term, but I'm going to use it for now. Anyone who implements that stack, now you automatically have these vulnerabilities that were used for things like over-the-air updates and other things. So like if we collectively decide to get together and create an IoT product company, we might go, we don't want to create the whole framework ourselves. Like we can go license that from someone.
Yep. Yeah, and
Yeah,
this is the thing we've been seeing for IoT stuff for a bit now, that not only do you see white boxed hardware vendors, using that term loosely type of thing, that one manufacturer makes cameras say consumer security cameras, and they sell it to 14 different manufacturers who put their silk screen on it.
Yep.
And now there's a piece of physical hardware that's running some base software. Now you want to connect that to the cloud. Well, you don't have to go create your own cloud and connectivity solution. You
Right.
can just buy this stuff. And that gets sold to, tens of different manufacturers. Same sort of thing. So white labeling a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, Bill, your roast is done.
Yeah, I mean, this is a
It
classic
wasn't
supply
me.
chain issue,
Yeah.
of course.
Well-
Where did my spy flash chip go?
I put it right there on your
Did we
keyboard.
did we lose it?
What do you mean? What
So,
do you mean
I'm-
we, Kimosabe?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing on this article is reading the timeline. I mean, Bitdefender contacts ThruTech in October of 23, and they don't release a patch. They don't confirm that the SDK is patched until April of 24.
Oh, I see it, Paul.
And
It's popping up on your
now,
laptop.
and only then can the people that are using it start doing patches and updates to their stuff.
It's crazy.
Yikes.
Well, I was using my spy flash chip as an example because I went on a no server or PC is safe when I'm around because I was doing something that required spy flash chips, and so I was going around to decommissioned hardware and pulling off the spy flash chips, especially the ones that it's called a dip connector. So it's like a raised thing off the motherboard, and then 8 pins. And I was just pulling them off to use for my own purposes. There should be a forthcoming blog post about the Bus Pirate 5. And one of the things I was doing was reading these spy flash chips. And what was interesting was I went to different hardware from different manufacturers from different years, and I'd pull off a WinBond chip with like basically the same part number and the exact same pinout.
SPI for that type of stuff is going to be the same.
Pretty similar, right? Yeah. But there's a board behind me. I don't know if it's in. I don't think it's in frame right now. Oh no, it's on that side.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know if you can see it right now. Probably not. But it is an older board. I don't know where it came from. We just decided to use it as a set decoration. That's how old it was. And I was like, hey, look, a spy flash chip. And I pulled it off, and it's actually not a WinBond spy flash chip. So I'll have to try reading that after the show. And one of them, I broke one of the legs off of it, and I was wondering if does it just grow another one? Is that how it works?
Fucking noob.
If you think it does.
Do I have to like put it in like a dry, cool space or something, and it'll grow a new one?
You need to put it in some rice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try that when I get home.
Also, how you can see the PHP source?
Yeah, you can right click on it, view source, right?
Oh my gosh, how old is that one?
Really old.
Oh man, that's what, 17 years old?
Yep.
Sorry.
That's what happens when you drink and podcast.
Yep. Gosh.
All right.
I got another IoT.
Let's keep on the IoT train.
One.
Well, does Sam's story about Waymo count as IoT since it's a driverless car?
Sam's not here, man. Though
Yeah, Sam's not.
I know, but we do have
some great stories.
We have somebody here that went in a Waymo in San Francisco.
Who?
Jim was in San Francisco. Jim. There's good fishing in San Francisco.
Wow, it's the Bay. This is the Bay Area. So,
Fisherman's Wharf. What else do you think Jim would do?
Wow.
Chartered a fishing boat.
It all makes sense now.
Can we get some waiters? It's getting pretty deep in here, Jim.
Well, Jim, I have some inside information here. No. I'm quickly.
All I can think of is the episode
All
I can think of was the episode of Silicon Valley where he ends up in the shipping container in the automated vehicle. I don't know if everyone remembers that.
No, but I don't remember that. But I do remember Upload. Like the whole thing is basically the guy gets uploaded because his driverless vehicle kills him.
Oh. Oh, was that an episode of Black Mirror? Or was that a
probably
whole
also
show?
Oh, there's a whole different show called Upload that is
okay.
like 3 seasons maybe. It's pretty cool. And it had it's just the people getting digitally uploaded as they die, and then based on like what level how much bandwidth they could afford for eternity was kind of like the cloud area they went to and the
Oh, that sounds
experience they had.
Is that
Yeah,
an Amazon show?
that's very possible. I mean,
Are you
it's
you're the queen
either
of Amazon because what was the one you talked about? The Feed.
The
Feed is
Feed,
another
which is the
Amazon show.
greatest thing.
Because they only last
Yes.
like 2 or 3 seasons, but some of them are really awesome.
They're so great. The Feed is still top, but Upload
Yeah.
is fun. It's a lot more. There's more humor in it. The Feed didn't have as much humor, I don't think.
No.
And Upload, yeah, they start modifying these driverless cars and killing people a little bit, and that's kind of whole premise of this, like the start of the story. However,
Sounds like Tesla to me.
Dude, I had a nightmare that my Tesla took over and was driving like 120 miles an hour while I was in it.
Man.
Oh,
So Paul, I have to admit something. I haven't been paying attention for like maybe the last 20 minutes. So
Hey, Bill, your roast is done.
He was basting his roast.
Yeah. So I found Slug Security, which apparently it's slugsec.ucsc.edu, has a full breakdown. This were the college students that attacked the washing machines, and their blog post is amazing. It shows the full Swagger breakdown of the APIs and how they did it. So it looks great. So if anybody was out there,
enough to create your script to send with your daughter to college.
Absolutely, this is something we can accomplish.
Nice.
Yeah, let's get back to Tesla or Waymo.
Let's go back to Waymo
Let's go back to Waymo.
And I love the blog post title, "Taking Down Big Laundry."
Millions of machines.
Millions. That's just one company managing 1 million across. That's a lot of laundry.
Yeah, they're going to sell millions and millions of credits in the next 4 hours after this gets posted, I bet. Okay, Waymo.
So Waymo.
Waymo.
The Internet of Things, including the robo-taxi. So yeah, I got to go in a Waymo in San Francisco thanks to the front desk guy at the Pickwick. Because you have to be on the waiting list, you have to do this whole thing. I took about a 40-minute ride from downtown to Golden Gate in the dark, through the Presidio, through all of these things. It was exquisite. It was the freaking greatest like taxi type ride I have ever experienced.
Wow.
It was, to me, and it was Jaguar I-Pace, and I sat in the back. There was, so there's nobody in the front whatsoever, and it felt solid, secure, safe. I mean, it turned and handled like you wish your Uber driver would do.
But I missed the white knuckle taxi rides though, where the taxi driver, like in New York City, is just whipping around 90 miles an hour, cutting people off, honking the horn, swearing at people. Like, I want that to be an option in the automated vehicle. Like, I want a 90s New York City taxi driver experience. That's what I want.
I do. I want the middle of Mexico 1987 Jetta, like 4-cylinder Jetta over the sand dunes experience.
4 cylinders and 3 wheels.
Yeah.
Right. So Mandy,
yeah.
What was the traffic like when you took it? So was traffic heavy or?
It was hecka difficult. It was pretty complex. Because I left at maybe 8 in the evening. It was a Friday evening and it was busy. Downtown was extremely busy, and it was interesting because they called the Waymo and it pulled into an alleyway that was like a couple of short blocks away, which felt a little odd because they had to walk down the street and go find this empty car that was waiting for us. And then this man puts me in this car, closes the door, and I leave. And right after that,
wait, now were you by yourself, or
I was by myself. No.
Oh, okay.
No, we went full hardcore kind of breaking the rules because he wasn't in the car with me. But they have I have pictures and stuff. Don't tell anybody. Yeah, it's just between us. Just between us, okay?
And all the listeners.
So I have pictures and stuff. I took some videos in machine, but what this article is saying about Waymo being so far ahead of Tesla's operational skill, I agree with. And in the Waymo in San Francisco is a brilliant place for them to be testing this because good grief, traffic is rough
Mm-hmm.
and packed, and parking is so intense. So having the Waymo be able to park so precisely and safely and navigate all of the very
Yeah, I
fast
will say
changing.
Tesla's. I've tested this on my Tesla. It parks amazing.
Yeah.
Automated driving is absolutely frightening. I
Really?
don't recommend it. It's
No,
like horrifying.
this was the only ride that I had in San Francisco. The only Uber or anything I took where my back wasn't like clenched because I was scared.
So I'm curious. So at the top of this article, you can see a vehicle that has a large LiDAR sensor on top. Is that what yours looked like as well?
Exactly. Yeah, it looked exactly like that. And it was very comfortable. Like there's the two large screens. I sat in the back and there was a large screen, and they have music profiles that you just scroll through. You can set your profile. They have preset like Spotify lists.
That's cool.
They have the things where you can call for help immediately. When you get in, it welcomes you, it talks to you, everything, like it tells you what to prepare for a little bit, and away we went. And when we pulled onto the next little block, I will say it was a very kind of surreal to be in the car, completely driverless. Nobody's in the front. And as we were sitting at the red light, 3 passed in front of us with nobody in them whatsoever.
Huh.
But I was kind of watching on my phone too and tracking how well it was going to navigate like 4-way stops and going through roundabouts. And I was extremely impressed by the way that it navigated, and just the way that the turns felt as well. Like it
was there a steering wheel on the front seat?
Yeah, and it was
Okay.
it was wheeling.
It was
But
is there any feedback while it's driving or no?
What kind of feedback?
Like, there's no audio, voice, nothing, no feedback?
I think if you needed to call for help,
Yeah,
or there are other things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
While we drove, I don't believe so. And at the end, it just came up and said that, okay, you've, reached your destination. The doors are locked. You'll need to pull the handle twice.
Huh.
And so you pulled it once to unlock and pulled again to actually open the door. It was really, really impressive. Like, I wish, honestly, after being in San Francisco traffic, I wish that 80 to 90% of the vehicles on the roads were Waymos.
Navigating a roundabout is really impressive, though. Most people struggle with that. Roundabouts are awful.
Roundabout was hard, and I was kind of going, well, how is this going to make sure? Because you're looking at the extreme human factor at a 4-way stop and it's dark. People could be drinking. There could be all this. We're in kind of this point, it was more in a residential area, but still a main thoroughfare. And I really valued how it stopped, how it very intelligently, it felt very solid in how it made its choice and went through the roundabouts, through the turns, through the 4-way stops, through and the really hectic changing of things in downtown, because there were so many variables. There were so many, like between the public transportation, the
computers love variables, though. They thrive on variables.
They did it.
They love to eat variables.
Variables are the spice of technology.
They also like interrupts too.
I like interrupts. Oh yeah, if you want a really nerdy read, by the way, it's a great segue. Is the history of interrupts.
I'm sorry, what?
The history of interrupts.
Did somebody interrupt me?
Pardon the interruption. A brief history of interrupts is the name of the
moving
article.
Right along.
Well, I learned a way to interrupt the Waymo. If you want to know about that, I could interrupt.
Did you put an interrupt in the Waymo? All
you have to do is put a traffic cone on its hood.
Oh yeah, we covered that.
We covered that.
Yeah,
remember
people doing that, right?
Yep.
So if you remember the days of what I loved is they did cover in this article the when you had to assign IRQs, interrupt request, and assign your devices a number so that the CPU could identify each individual component by number when it needed to interrupt operations and say, hey, I need to do something. And then, of course, it gets a lot more advanced from there.
And you can jailbreak a TV with your PS.
And
sorry, I was doing another interrupt. I'm just busting your balls.
No, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on the interrupt story, but yeah. And you can jailbreak
a PS4.
A PS4.
TV.
Have you guys ever tried to jailbreak a PS4? I have not.
No.
Apparently, you can do it with your LG TV.
Yeah,
you Ethernet network them together, and
yep,
it's crazy.
You Ethernet network them together. Set the LAN via PoE, and there's an app that you install on your LG TV because it's Android based.
Yep.
Or WebOS based.
I think LG's WebOS.
Yep. And there's an app. There's an app for that on your TV, and if they're networked together, it sends the remote code execution and jailbreaks your PS4.
What an amazing time to be alive.
Yep.
I mean, there's also probably a lot better ways to do that, but
yeah. So when I saw this, I was wondering, is it just because we can? Is that why they did it?
I think so.
Because doing it with your TV is, it's pretty dope, right?
Yeah.
So okay.
We do that a lot, Bill. With pretty storied history in us just because we can.
Because
yeah. I did it with my TV, because
right?
I'm cool. Because I'm cool.
Because I could.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you use a computer for that? I use my TV.
I use my Flipper Zero.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yes.
I'll be impressed when you do it through the fax machine.
What fax machine?
Exactly.
What's a fax machine? No, I am that old.
I wonder if those have a spy flash chip.
Probably.
It could be. I will say the last one I pulled off, though, none of the pins bent. Like, I haven't practiced enough now.
Oh my God, we're still on this.
So speaking of interrupts,
day two of the class involves inserting them back in their sockets without bending the pins.
Oh yeah, that's
not happening.
Actually, now it is, because this one I pulled off. All the pins are straight. I could totally put this back if I wanted to.
If you wanted to.
Except I don't remember which direction it came off in. Which means
day 2 of the class is learning about the orientation.
It's learning
about pin 1 is marked, right?
He's going to
learn. On
the
socket and on the chip. They're both marked.
Are they both marked?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what if you don't pay attention to those marks? Magic smoke.
Don't turn it on until you're sure it's right.
Smoke.
Yeah, you'll release the magic blue smoke.
Yep.
That's right.
There's nothing like putting a multi-pin in and discovering you've bent one under the bottom.
Oh, I know.
Why is this not working?
So, yep, we're back on spy flash chips, Bill.
I mean, I'm sure you know this, right? But you know that pin 1's marked, right? Like usually with the little circle in the chip, right?
A dot.
Yeah, a little dot in the chip, and that's pin 1.
If nothing else, there's one end of the chip will have a half moon shape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, half moon,
and then the one to the top left at that point.
And the dip has a mark where the half moon shape goes.
Right, the half moon is at the top, and then the number 1 is on the left, right?
Correct.
Am I remembering right? It's been a long
the left
time.
right.
The left right.
The left right.
The right.
It's on the left.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
It's on the left. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The VCC is usually, if you're looking at the half moons on the top, in the upper right. On the WinBond chips that I was doing, that was where
every
voltage was going.
8-pin.
Every 8.
Dip.
So it's that's
every
8-pin dip.
It's it's pretty standard. And part of the reason why I know that, there was a guy that I was following that built a circuit board, and he found that he wired the SPI incorrectly on the boards that he had done, and he already ordered a whole shit ton of them. Didn't find out until afterwards. So he was looking for SPI chips that had a different pinout, and they literally do not exist.
Yeah. Can you imagine calling a manufacturer who's just pumping out 1 trillion of these things a second and like, hey, is there any way we can change the pinout? Right. Like
on just 100
and just 100.
Right. Yeah.
And they do 100 every second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because spy chip, these spy chips are like what, $1 a piece?
Not even like a quarter.
So, do you remember back in the day when you could get a WeTech chip for your Spark 2 that was basically overclock it?
Pepperidge Farm.
You had to replace the CPU, and there were 10,000 pins on the CPU not to bend.
Oh, wow. No.
There might have been a couple less than 10,000, but there was a
9,997
boatload of them.
Oh boy.
Those were the days.
Oh, Larry, you got to talk about your Wi-Fi router doubles as an Apple AirTag.
Yeah.
I want to hear
Yeah.
about this one.
So what is old is new again.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
effectively here is why your Wi-Fi router doubles as an Apple AirTag. It all comes down to geolocation. And the story goes on that both Apple and Google operate their own Wi-Fi based positioning system. Effectively, this was so when Apple started doing this, they were for your location analysis. They were getting your location because the phones didn't have GPS in them from your cell towers. And then they would enhance that with GPS finally. So you got better resolution, but then GPS doesn't work inside, so they added Wi-Fi to that triangulation.
Mhm.
And originally, Apple did not have their own database of where Wi-Fi access points were located on the planet.
Mhm.
And there's this open source thing out there
Called
called
Wiggle.
Wiggle,
Wiggle.
but not for commercial use.
Mm.
But there were companies out there that supported that. That they do have commercial stuff out there, and it was for Apple. It was really expensive, and they realized, why are we paying this third party to license their data when we have millions of collection devices in the field so that we
Mhm.
can build our own? And so you were effectively wiggling from your iPhone with GPS and figuring out where that was.
And sending that to Apple to build their database.
To build their database.
Okay.
Yep. And then they leverage that for doing geolocation.
Mhm.
Now, it was discovered as part of the iSniff GPS tool that Apple was able to use this data, and you could query the API to get data from you.
You could query Apple's version of Wiggle.
Effectively, yes.
Mhm.
But the API was undocumented. So they did the researchers did some reverse engineering of the API calls that were sent in the clear at the
Mhm.
time. This was 2012.
Okay.
So they reverse engineered the API, and what they found was Google also had the database, and you can ask Google, "Hey, where am I on the planet? Because I see these two MAC addresses for access points
Mhm.
from the Wi-Fi side." Apple requires one MAC address.
Mm.
I see one MAC address for an access point, and it will return you the 400 closest SSIDs
Mhm.
and the one that you asked for, and will tell you where you are on the planet. So
Mhm.
Apple's API, Google's API requires two MAC addresses. Apple's requires one. So if you can get a MAC address, you can tell where this thing is on the planet. So, and I thought this was kind of interesting that some of the researchers, PhD students, and so forth, they could start looking at MAC address ranges and look up MAC address ranges through Apple's API and figure out where those devices were on the planet.
Oh,
So
that's
they
cool.
took the range of MAC addresses assigned to Starlink's Wi-Fi side and figured out where all the Starlink stuff was, like in
Cool.
Ukraine. Now the question is that I wonder what tools they used for. Because in 2014, Don Weber and I took the portions of the iSniff GPS Apple geolocation stuff and spun that off in a tool called Loc No GPS. So if you search for iSniff GPS on Google, first one is Hubert's iSniff GPS. The second one is my GitHub repository for Loc No GPS. And that was so that I could do warshipping. Take a Wi-Fi access point, put it in the mail, have it gather MAC addresses, and then we could figure out what the path was after the fact by observing BSSIDs by querying Apple's, because we would maybe only have one at any given point.
I don't see your GitHub repo in the results, but
well, maybe it's just because I'm special. So I searched for iSniff GPS. The first result was Hubert 3 iSniff GPS number 1, and number 2 was Hacks with the Matrix.
Number 2 is a
GPS.
YouTube video from Cybersecurity India for me.
Me too.
Huh. All right.
Third one is also Hubert. Fourth one is an X post.
Clearly, my Google results are superior.
Mm-hmm.
iSniff GPS, all one word.
Oh, I put a space in. I sniff space GPS.
Nope.
Or no,
I sniff
all
GPS,
one word.
all one word.
Oh yeah. Now you're second.
So yeah, what is old is new again. Like the rediscovery of, oh hey, Apple collects all this data. They've got an API. I'd love to read the research paper and determine, like, did they use Loc-No GPS to do this? Because there was some Python already out there to do this stuff.
Hey,
And some of the
let's
things that
all
we
look
did were
through.
fun. Go ahead.
Let's all look through Larry's Python and see if he did a good job.
No, I did not. I totally did not.
It was 10 years ago, right? So 10 years ago code. Like, yeah.
Dude, it's horrible.
You want
I
to
know.
grade it on
fucking
air?
horrible.
Yeah.
It's fucking horrible. I'll tell you
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
I totally should have used a dictionary for that.
It's-
I'm thinking.
I blame Don Weber. So, to be in, I mean, and part of that was one of the things that I wanted to do was, as we're discovering, like, hey, if we know the MAC address, the BSSID, we can find out where this thing is on the planet from Apple's API. Well, that's great. What if I know one for D-Link and we can find out where every D-Link was shipped and is on
Yeah.
the planet? Like, so
Well,
you just fuzz.
I
And
think
some-
that
Go ahead,
sorry,
Bill.
Larry. Sorry, man. Like, I think that example that you used about Starlink
Yep.
in Ukraine is disaster, right? Like, that's a really powerful example, right? Knowing, at that point, you start to understand where forces are, right?
Right.
Without any kind of using
Right.
any kind of satellite or whatever. That's
Because
interesting.
like that was one of the things early on in the conflict in Ukraine was they took out the internet, and now Ukraine had no access to the internet. So Elon shipped thousands of Starlink devices to be able to be used by government, military, you name it.
So when you're talking about, like, let's talk about the D-Link side, right? So like let's go away from Starlink. If we were to say at that point you would be able to isolate it down to, like, if you can now fuzz and you can start to understand that
Yes.
location, you can get it down to someone's house, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was part of the talk that we did on the warshipping stuff was that was some of the added benefits is that we could fuzz up to the 3 octets of the MAC address. So you could get everything for an individual manufacturer that had and so forth. And part of the reason that came out of was that question because there was a TV show on, and I cannot remember the name of the TV show. But at one point they showed the Mac interface for doing Wi-Fi, and they held the control down when they populated to put more techie stuff on the screen. And as part of that, they populated a list of Wi-Fi networks, and one of them had the BSSID exposed.
Oh.
And I
Ooh.
couldn't make it out. I couldn't make all of it out. So I wanted to be able to randomize some of these, and we found out that it was the actual laptop in the production facility where they had captured just the screenshot to populate, because it was just the screenshot. It was like looking over someone's shoulder, and it was the filming of that over someone's shoulder that we saw, and you could tell exactly where it was filmed based on
God, that's
the
cool.
MAC
That
address.
is so cool. Yeah.
Hey, on that heat map of the BSSIDs, it is pretty intriguing that China doesn't show up basically at all. It shows that between November 2022 to November 2023, they had more than 2 billion Wi-Fi access points on Apple's WPS, and basically none, almost none in China.
Huh. Oh yeah. Yeah, that first heat map of where access points were, there's literally nothing in
It's like
China.
at the very, yeah. At
I
the
wonder.
edge.
I mean, go
It
ahead.
looks like
Isn't
there's
it
more
hard
in
to
North
get-
Korea.
Well, isn't it hard to get iPhones in China? I thought maybe I have that wrong.
No, they have them. Aren't, but I
That's
thought
where they make 'em.
don't they? Yeah,
You can definitely get legit iPhones in China.
yeah.
I wonder if it's due to privacy and or some other thing that Apple isn't allowed to gather that data for China or something of the like.
Hey, I just want to point out Sam Bound has joined us. Sam,
Woohoo!
welcome.
Hello,
Hey, Sam.
Good evening.
What's going on, man?
There's, looks
Sam,
like there's certainly a lack of them in the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
Shocking.
oh yeah,
And the
Sam,
middle
we're,
of
we're talking about
Australia.
your story number 20 is how we got on this.
It was also
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
my
the air
stories, too.
tags. I know.
Mhm.
I wish I understood it better, but it's surprising. Apple keeps doing this. How sloppy they are with personal data.
Yeah, so Sam, this one we had the discussion earlier on, and this was actually some undocumented API stuff that comes back from 2012, from some projects that I did some work with in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this has been going on a long time.
If you zoom in on Kansas, you can see my house.
Yeah,
You see like a beacon
Yeah,
because you have 4,000 Apple devices.
right. They're all in the drawer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sam, let me catch you up. We already talked about Waymo like for a really long time.
Yeah.
Mandy gave us the complete rundown of an entire 45-minute.
I could summarize it. It was a thumbs up, right?
It was a thumbs up from
yeah.
Mandy.
Mhm.
10 out of 10 stars.
Sure.
They
Sure,
are
humans.
definitely playing chess. They are playing chess, Sam. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, I wanted to dig into some of your stories.
Hey Sam, while you were gone, they were trying to steal your stories and not give you any credit. That's
No,
what
we
they
didn't.
said.
We didn't go
That's
near.
what they said.
Well, I didn't write them.
Oh, okay.
Sam, your story number 1.
Yeah.
Arizona woman accused of helping North Koreans get remote IT jobs
Yeah.
at 300 companies. This was, of all your stories, the most concerning for me.
Well, it's we've heard this a few times before. I mean, North Koreans are getting jobs in companies, and but this is a pretty good one. I mean, when you get a job at a company, she would hold the company laptop at her American location, and then you'd proxy in with remote software, so you appear to be coming from America. It seems like a pretty good plan. They'd also do resume. They'd help you write your resume and all that. I don't know if there's any way to stop this. I'm sure there's a ton of North Koreans working at all our companies. And I don't know how you're ever going to get rid of them until you get rid of remote work. And you hear people say, and everybody tries to force everybody to come back to the office. People just quit. They're not coming back,
Right.
no matter what you do. So I don't think we're ever going to have companies.
No,
that don't have
and I was listening to
Koreans.
another podcast that was talking about remote work. You're absolutely right. Like, it's here to stay.
Everybody, all the companies I work for, they're remote. And when this comes up, everyone says, no, we have to keep working remote, which I tend to agree. I mean, it's hard to imagine driving in to physically work somewhere anymore. That's like over.
Yep. I mean, we've seen a very similar type of story on this one, and I don't know whether it was North Korea, but there was definitely someone that got hired for more than one job and outsourced their job to someone in a foreign country that were paying them pennies on the dollar, but they needed an RSA token to be able to authenticate. So all they did was they set up a computer with a webcam. With the RSA token in front of it.
Yeah.
But they weren't doing the remote proxy to another machine. They were letting them connect directly from whatever country they were in, and a review of the VPN logs showed really crazy stuff.
Well, you know what irritates me is one of my clients will not let you use a password manager. It notices if you type in the password too fast, and it won't let you in unless you go type it in by hand.
What?
So
That's annoying.
They're getting pretty harsh about trying to enforce their policies, you know.
Well, I guess your password's going to be spring 2024, right? Like, like that's
with an
what you want.
exclamation point at the end.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that accomplishes.
No, it has to be 14 characters long with uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. And you have to change, and you still have to change it every 90 days, which, you know, I think it was 3 years ago when the government told us you didn't have to do that. But as far as I can tell, and the companies I consult for, the uptake of that information is still 0%. Nobody knows. Nobody knows that you shouldn't make them change the
There's a
password.
caveat there. 863-3 not only said don't use that password format, but in order to do what they want, you also have to monitor passwords for compromise and breach notifications. Most folks don't have that.
No, of course not. No.
So then they say, well, we don't have that, so we don't have to. So I mean, I think it's ludicrous even before the new rule, change passwords every 90 days.
Yes.
You're just going to wind up with these ones.
Oh, zoom in.
Oh, there's Lee's passwords, right?
There's Lee's passwords. Hey, roll that
That-
back.
That's Lee's one password database right there.
That security recommendation, that's what I give non-technical people for advice. Just write down the password somewhere so you quit using the same password everywhere. It's a poor man's password manager.
Yep. That's why they sell in the bookstore these little notebooks. Passwords. That'd be
So
a fun
I'm
thing to
really-
give away at a conference.
Yeah.
Little notebooks that say passwords on the front.
Right? Why not?
Yeah.
I wonder if the North Koreans are doing good work. I mean, so why are we so concerned? What if they're doing a great job?
Well, I
What
would
if they
imagine
go in there
they're
and kick
probably
butt? I think, wow.
I imagine they're probably doing good work. but just the money supports. You're violating U.S. Export regulations, right? Now you're contributing money to a sanctioned regime, so there's legal consequences.
Yeah, that's that's
and
that's true,
how do they
Sam.
even get paid? Bitcoin.
Well,
Right.
I
That's the
don't
first
know. I guess.
indication, right?
No, it said that. Well, I don't know how they get paid. It said all the paychecks came to her house.
Right. So I guess she forwards crypto or something. Probably crypto.
Wow.
How many? I don't know how many individuals, but it was over 300 companies.
Oh, a lot more than 60.
Yeah.
And
I
she's
feel a
skimming
new
some off the
business.
top. She's probably making it great. She was. I mean, until she got. Well,
Yeah.
did she get caught or it says accused? But
I imagine you would get caught when, remember, they use stolen American identities. So I imagine you get caught within a year when those people pay their taxes. And they say, what about this other W-2 for your job? And they're like, who, me? What W-2?
Wow.
Yep.
But yeah.
she operated a laptop farm.
Yeah.
You got to
All
water
the
those
best
laptops every
ideas
day.
all the best ideas are crimes.
It says alleged $6.8 million conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, the law is really annoying. I remember one time there was a guy running a fake login site, and it was in Belize, and they have no cybercrime laws in Belize. So I wanted to hack in and tell people who are no compromised. And I asked my lawyer, and he said, you can't do it because you're subject to American law, even when operating in Belize. And I'm like, there's just no fun here. I mean,
Yeah,
I hope you did it anyway.
That was also similar things that I remember hearing. Cayman Islands. There was no laws against hacking Caymanian banks, as long as the attacks occurred from within the Cayman Islands.
and I guess
the problem is that go hack it, get the money out, and good luck getting off the island before they catch you.
Right.
Yeah. The law is just annoying. Anyway.
But don't break the law, just listeners out there. No. But we're not trying.
Well, I think a more realistic
now we're just a bad influence. Tune in every week to Pulse Security Weekly. We'll tell you how to commit cyber crimes without getting caught.
No, this is America. Whatever you do, you have some legal exposure. My college gives free classes to everybody that wants them, and they get sued all the time because the sidewalks are too steep or there's something wrong with the stairs. No matter what you do, there is some legal exposure. You just have to have lawyers on your staff and mitigate the risk. It's just like every other risk. It does not go to zero.
He's got a good point.
So what you're saying is tell people to commit crimes to make enough money to hire good lawyers, and then you're good, right?
That's the American way.
That's the American way.
It's the American way.
The lawyers need money too.
I'm not avid. That's going to be a soundbite that's taken out of context now.
I'm glad to contribute wisdom to the world. That's why I'm here.
Right.
Speaking of contributing wisdom to the world,
yes,
I know Sam's got a bunch of others. Wisdom to the world, ChatGPT 4.0.
Yeah, it's getting pretty impressive. People like the multimodal stuff. It has a whole bunch of things, of course, but the thing that impressed me, which I'm still trying to understand, is a guy decided to test its coding ability. So he just put in a screenshot of Breakout and said, I want to play Breakout. And it wrote the entire code just from the screenshot. Now, that's when I first heard that, I thought that's amazing. And now I think that is too amazing. It probably just found the code.
Yeah, it already knew how to play Breakout, or like you said, it already knew that it had the code for Breakout and just spit it out. Because Larry, you're doing something similar.
And
right?
and Sam, I'm with you on this because I'm trying to get a Python.
You're trying to get me an Ice Cube? I think is what you're saying.
I'm trying to get a Python port of Zork so that I can run it on like a device that does like MicroPython or something of the like.
Yeah.
And I spent like an hour trying to get ChatGPT. Now, this was not 4.0 because 4.0 wasn't out yet. Trying to get it to create me a Python port. And all it did was like, so we're going to set up this thing and here's how we're going to do it. I'm like, just fucking do it. So it went and did phase one. And I'm like, and they're like, how does that look? I'm like, well, I think it looks good, but I don't have enough code to test this. So just keep going with the methodology. And it was like, it wrote like 6 lines of code. I'm like, well, how does this look? Well, how does this look? I'm like,
right. Well,
so I recently moved. So right now I kind of feel like it's the whole LLMs is like streaming services. Like I'm moving, I'm paying $20 here, $20 there. But I've canceled all subscriptions except for GPT-4o. It's blowing me away. And so one of the things that I'm using it for is I recently got a laser cutter, or etcher engraver, and so I'm able to use GPT-4 to help me generate layered like art that I can then cut out like in separate SVG layers. And it's just it's amazing how well and I love that they call it 4.0, right? So like that's easy to say now, like it's not 4.0, it's 4.0, right? Like wow, that's kind of cool. But but it is truly amazing.
Now, Bill,
but hold on, Bill. First, you have way too much time on your hands. Second, which laser cutter did you get?
Yeah, so I gotta tell you guys, I love this thing. So I got the Elgu Vecta,
Nice.
PHECDA, I believe is how you spell it. And it was a Kickstarter project. I think it's like $600 or something. 20-watt laser. It's a diode laser, not a CO2. But I am literally just loving this thing. That's pretty much I pretty much quit working and everything, and I'm just out in the garage like burning stuff lately. The funniest thing happened the other night. I was doing this long cut. It was a 4-hour cut, real intricate, and all of a sudden I just started smelling like, yo, what? Like, you just, the smell changed, right? Like, so I run out to the garage expecting a fire or something. And what had happened was a June bug had been attracted to the color of the laser and
That's
got
awesome.
just burnt. Like, the laser just cut that thing in half. And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, cool.
Nice. It sounds like you need some venting in your garage for that, Bill.
I certainly do. Yeah, absolutely.
And a camera inside the cutter so you can capture that stuff happening.
For next time.
So that the carnage, your laser, you're getting to take some carnage with your laser.
Now Bill's collecting June bugs to run through. The project has changed now.
Right. Yeah. Completely changed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and now, Bill, are you using just the standard model, or is there a special custom LLM for that?
Great question. So I'm just using the standard model, but I created my own and I've been training it over time, right?
So you create your own GPT.
Yeah. And
That's
so
awesome.
like what I did is I gave it other projects that I'd worked on, like look at these layers, look at how now. And so what I would do is I would say, here are 4 files. I want you to stack them on top of each other so that you can see what the finished product, because when you stack, what's really cool about layered art is you can introduce depth and just it just becomes very interesting to look at, right? And but so trying to teach it how to understand. I'm looking for trees in the background, so those need to be on a bottom layer, right? So they need to be pushed way back. Just kind of taught it over time, and now it's just pushing these things out perfectly, right? In perfect SVG that I can import in my software, and essentially just burn straight from there. It's absolutely incredible.
How did you teach it over time? You just mean it remembers your previous questions in a conversation?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sam. So, like and I'm sure you've seen this, but like when even with like GPT-4, over on the left-hand side, there was your previous conversations that you had, right? So that one conversation is where I go to generate art.
And can you save that as a GPT? I've seen specific GPTs for that. I'm not sure how to create those though.
I don't either. I started looking at them. So with 4.0 now, you can just @symbol and bring in other GPTs, like bring in, and so you can save them, but I don't know how to do that yet. But that would be something.
You mean separate from creating a custom GPT? Is that what you're asking, Paul?
Yeah, but I need one that creates podcast album art, right? And the Dolly is like kind of lame. It like makes spelling, and we notice this collectively, Larry. Like, it just does weird stuff. It spells stuff wrong. Like
none of the AI stuff does really good with spelling. So I use a lot of Midjourney, and the Midjourney latest version also has problems with spelling, despite you telling it exactly what letters to put in.
So it's not just me. Yeah,
no, it's not just you.
Which would be weird if it was just me.
It sounds like what you've got there, you've basically reinvented retrieval augmented generation, which is what Microsoft Copilot does. Before you have a query, and it looks through all your documents and picks out related information and adds it to your query. So like
Yeah.
before your query, you put like pages of useful information, and you can do that manually, or you can use Microsoft Copilot. I just wrote this
And
up.
what did you call it, Sam?
It's RAGs, Retrieval Augmented Generation. This technique where you have data. First, you have a simple engine that retrieves relevant parts of the data by just matching words or something, the way Google would. And then you add that in front of your query. So when you type a query, before it, there are pages.
Oh, it's doing that automatically.
That
It's like
data-
auto prompting it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you can have the example of 3 or 4 projects you liked before your project. Say, make another one like these.
Yeah, and with 4.0, Sam, you can connect it to your Google Drive, and it does that automatically. You don't even have to be
Oh, that's
teaching.
kind of
You
scary,
can connect
though.
it right to your Google Drive and say, these are the files that I want you. Like, you don't even it's one click, like
Right.
in 4.0. Yeah.
Well, I know that's the question. In fact, this gets me. Did you guys talk about Microsoft Recall?
Because I've
that's
heard
related-
something about that. I heard
that's related to
what
this.
is that?
Well, the Microsoft Recall is a feature which I saw Brian Krebs wrote it up, I think, or someone did, and said it was going to be proposed. But then there's a tweet saying it's now the default on a corporate version of Windows.
Oh, and
Remember,
Kevin Beaumont called that
Yeah.
like an atrocity.
Yeah, because it remembers every screenshot. Every few seconds it takes a screenshot. It saves them, and it goes back months, and it saves them locally with encryption. That means anybody that gets command execution on your machine can steal it, and you don't need to put a keylog or anything on your machine. They've just got everything right there to steal. This seems insane, and the question I have is, what good does this do anybody? How could they possibly?
We can see what kind of porn Paul watches.
Exactly. I mean, why would anybody turn this? This would be
you'd
something you pay for and buy because nobody would want it. Now they've made it a default that's turned on by default, which is crazy.
What's it for?
Nuts.
What is its purpose? I don't even understand what its purpose is.
I've never seen an explanation of that. All the comments
You gotta ask it what its purpose is, and you always get the frightening answer in science fiction.
It's not a
What
chat
is your
AI,
purpose?
but
To destroy all of humanity. That's usually the answer.
Do you know there's like 150 co-pilots in Microsoft? They have gone nuts on AI, and they're building AI into everything to the max. So this is just another AI feature to throw in.
This is how we get Skynet. Just saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the safety team at OpenAI quit. I mean, everybody's just rushing with AI fast and forward, no breaks, no safety concerns. All that is like out the window right now because it's all to rush and get your product out there first.
So just reading through your article, Sam, here, it looks like the recall is for the new Copilot branded PCs that are from Microsoft. So it looks like it's only for at least only enabled by default on those devices, right?
Yes, you do have to have the new AI chip in your hardware.
Of course you do.
Yeah, which is what they're going to push. This is, of course, remember, every time Microsoft comes up with a new OS like Windows 11 or Vista, everyone says, why? What will it do that the previous one won't do? And the answer is nothing, but they always try to pretend there's some new feature that would make you jump to it. Like Windows 11, I actually got Windows 11 because it was supposed to have built-in Android, and then they took that out.
Oh, that sounds like Google.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the new thing.
You're going to go buy a Copilot Plus PC. Am I reading that right?
Exactly right. You're going to buy a Copilot Plus PC with a special AI chip and super Copilot features all over the place, all of which are AI. With valuable things like this.
In our Slack, I didn't add this into my stories, but Kevin Beaumont, Gossi the dog it was on X, but I think he switched to Mastodon. If Google his name, it'll come right up. He's got a blog too, Double Pulsar is the name of his blog, and it's his article is how the new Microsoft Recall feature fundamentally undermines Windows security.
Yeah. And if you follow his chain on Mastodon, he says now it's the default, and he shows you how to turn it off, which is not easy.
I don't know.
Did I tell you that I run Linux on my desktop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use a Mac. I only use Windows as a target, man.
Yeah. That should be a t-shirt. I only use Windows as a target.
Speaking of using Windows as a target, what was it? There's some new things. Windows 11 features strengthened security to address evolving the cyber threat landscape.
Yeah.
Except on Copilot PCs.
Yeah. Copilot PCs like all the vulnerabilities, all the privacy violations, all that.
Yep, they provide advanced firmware safeguards, dynamic root of trust measurement to protect from chip to cloud using the Microsoft Proton security processor.
Yeah.
And
Pluton.
Proton's like a thing though, but it's
Pluton.
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 Pluton, that's it.
Yep.
But a lot of that is just in like correctly configured Intel technologies under the hood, because Intel chips and ecosystems have been able to do the system of trust, measured boot for like a really long time.
Yeah, I thought you would know it. Like, does this amount to a more secure boot than Windows had before? It sure sounds like it.
It depends on which stage of the boot that you're talking about, right? Like measured boot is slightly different, and then there's like another, it hands it off to secure boot, but secure boot is still just secure boot in the traditional sense. But there's other other processes in there. I interviewed someone from, if you check out the Below the Surface show, we talk about that a lot. We interviewed someone from Intel about the differences between, because it's confusing between measured boot, secure boot, and there's one other one that it escapes me. But like all those technologies exist, and I think Microsoft has done this with their Secure Core PC initiative. This sounds very similar to that, but Secure Core PC was really just taking what Intel makes available and configuring it correctly.
Wow.
A lot of PC and server manufacturers don't take what Intel makes available, and either they don't implement everything or they implement it incorrectly. Which and they won't admit this on the air, but I'm like, dude, that's got to be frustrating for you. Like, I talked to Vince Zimmer. I'm like, Vince is an amazing person, super, super smart, was one of the early people to help develop Secure Boot. I was like, dude, it's got to be frustrating that you put this stuff out there and like basically people screw it up, right? And they're like, they won't admit to like that level of frustration, but you kind of get the sense that you're building these awesome things, you're documenting, there's really super smart people, and everyone's at the table. Like Microsoft's at the table when these are being developed. Microsoft was at the table developing Secure Boot. I want to say Vince told me that the Microsoft and Intel offices are like right near each other. Like, and so they were developing this stuff in tandem and coming up with really great stuff. But it falls down when you get to the OEM model, right? Where anyone should be able to make a PC that has an Intel processor that runs Windows. And that's where the security model breaks down, because you're leaving it up to a third party. What I like about Microsoft's hardware, like I have an older Surface Pro sitting here next to me.
Does it run Linux?
It does not. It runs Windows, and is like one of my Windows. But I do have Windows computers. For the times where you really need a Windows computer
to attack,
or no, I have legitimate uses for them. But since Microsoft controls the whole ecosystem for a Surface, as an example, they can do a better job of securing the platform, because they don't have to allow for the exceptions. They don't have to allow for third parties to do certain things. Microsoft can go, we control the hardware, software, and firmware, much like Apple. You said you're using, like Apple does the same thing. We just have to trust that they're doing a good job in that process, and they're not without vulnerabilities. The problem is oftentimes we don't have visibility because they can lock it down so much, because they control all of the various aspects of hardware, firmware, and the operating system.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't looked into Proton. That I want to say I've heard stuff.
Pluton.
What did I say? Proton.
Yeah.
That's male.
Pluton. Yeah.
Pluton. And that makes total sense. Like that tracks that they could create a secure environment like that.
So one of the ones that was pointed out to me on this particular article by my buddy James was that one of the security features that they're touting with Windows 11 is that they are going to be deprecating NTLM as the second half of 2024.
I assume that's network NTLM authentication. If so, it's really out of date. I don't think it's local NTLM hashes. They seem to be determined to never upgrade that.
Yep. It doesn't actually say deprecating NTLM has been a huge ask from our security community, as it will strengthen user authentication, and deprecation is planned in the second half of 2024. So they don't really specify network-based, but user authentication. So even local?
Yeah, even this article talks about secure core PCs. They say we saw cyber attackers increasingly exploiting hardware. That was my coworkers that I work with today.
I
Actually,
think
that led to that much of the research that they did actually did lead to Microsoft creating the secure code PC.
Well, Larry, I think they do want to get rid of passwords entirely, but they're not going to do that in 2024. They want to go to Windows Passport.
Right.
Did you guys talk about QRadar? Because I was hoping you would have some wisdom on this one.
Oh, this is IBM's not a security company anymore. So I was trying to think about it. Is QRadar, was that the one security product that they had? Even
they claim
like
to
Red Hat acquisition and OpenShift, there's no security products in that stack, is there?
Well, they do a lot of security consulting, and they're very proud of that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
we're talking products, but QRadar is there was no
But it's such an important security product, and they just did what IBM always promised never to do. The whole point of IBM is you'll never get fired for buying IBM, because they won't just throw your product away and leave you looking like a fool. And they seem to have just done that to the QRadar users.
I completely agree. And it came out of nowhere too, right? So, can you imagine? So a lot of big companies, I've been there before. When you're selecting a big SIM vendor, and you're talking sometimes like millions of dollars that you're going to invest into that product, right?
Yeah.
And so the selection of that product you take very seriously, and you contemplate things like, well, who's behind it? Are they going to be around? This is a long-term investment. I don't know how you guys feel, but so Sam, when I read that article, when it came out, that was that you never get fired for going with IBM. That was the first thing I thought too. Yeah, I was glad that it was going to Palo Alto, right? It could have, it could have been worse, right? But I'm not sure. How do you guys feel about it going to Palo Alto? Are you still not getting fired?
I'm sure there's going to be a painful transition process to the Palo Alto product, which is not as famous. And so I don't know, man. I don't think I'd want to be the guy.
Palo Alto picked that up through acquisition.
Yeah.
But I can't remember their acquisition history is like a mile long, but.
Well, you wonder how support is going to be working, right? You wonder, it's been a long time since I've looked at QRadar, but when I was talking to IBM about it, they were really, really pushing their AI. I can't even remember what it was called,
XSIAM. They're going to migrate QRadar people to something called XSIAM. And it's a whole lot less famous. I don't think I would like to be the guy explaining to the boss, oh, it'll be fine. This XSIAM thing will be just as good as QRadar.
So it's not. So you're saying it's not QRadar anymore. They're migrating to a different product.
That's what they say.
Right.
Wow.
So
they're not going to do the ingested into some other products thing. They're going to just basically phase them over to something
on IBM's
else.
site though. They've got a portfolio of security products. Now, first on their site is QRadar, which is no longer IBM. But they say they have mobile security, data security through products, and attack surface management with Randori. And Randori was through acquisition, identity and access management, like a host of other things, fraud protection. So, like the article said that they were getting out of the security game, but they still have X-Force, which is research and consulting. I think, Sam, that's what you were mentioning, right? They're still, I think X-Force is where the security consulting comes out of, as well as security research. So they're still in the security game. They dumped QRadar. That's my assessment of it.
That's a pretty good, clear signal for other SIM vendors. I believe.
SIM is dead. I was having this conversation in a private chat channel that SIM is dead. And we started listing out like vendors that did like next gen. They were messaging on next gen SIM and things like that. That we just I haven't even thought of some of these companies in a really long time. I won't name by name, but there was some that I was like, oh yeah, like they were like really present at one time, presenting papers, blog posts, social, like the whole thing. Like they were really thriving. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't heard about some of the SIM or SOAR vendors in a really long time. It kind of faded out.
Is this going to be like the IDS is dead paper?
Yeah, could be.
So what are they going to use instead? Are they going to use something like Zscaler? Does that somehow mean you don't need it anymore?
Yeah, they're going to use next gen AI. No, because but to like roll it, but you think about, say, to like roll a sim, you really just, you need to collect logs and send them to
AI.
AI, or to like Google's got an offering that'll do it, and you can use Elastic, and you can get sysmon data and send it somewhere and analyze it with much lower cost and get the same better results than the big sim. Like so many different projects and companies were formed based on the Splunk is too expensive. And I don't knock Splunk, but like this is a fact I've observed. Like people say Splunk's too expensive, so a whole, it's like sub industry was born to go, you don't have to buy Splunk. You can buy this thing that's based on open source, or its license model is way more affordable than the big sims, and you get the same results. And largely that technology caught up, and you ended up getting better results. Like back in the day, remember we used to talk about, you get a sim and you send all the logs to it, and then they just kind of sit there. And that's what sim is, and it checks the compliance box. I get a sim.
Well, they said the number one SIM provider is Microsoft, and you just mentioned Google. I think that might be the issue. It'll no longer be a third-party product. You'll just get it with your cloud provider.
Right. But Google, it's a separate, what is Google? It's Google Cloud.
Chronicle.
Chronicle. But they renamed it. I want to.
It doesn't matter. It's Chronicle.
What is Microsoft's and Google's thing with renaming crap, man? Like I haven't hard enough time keeping track of who's doing what, like what it does, and keeping it in the in my brain, and then they just got to go and rename things, and then you end up with Entra. Like what the?
Yeah,
what?
that's right.
Oh God.
This is why whenever I use Windows, I have to just Azure. I just have to use the MS-DOS command line because they keep moving and hiding everything in Windows.
Yes.
Yeah, they renamed it. It's called Windows command line now.
Yeah, I know they did. And terminal, which is active. So you finally use Control-C, Control-V. I've only been waiting for that for 30 years.
Yeah, enter and no, enter is not a paste command.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, in my Linux terminal though, like everything works. Never mind.
But you got to do a shift to that. It's Control-C, Control-V in the GUI, and it's Control-Shift, and even one going to the other. Yet, don't get me started.
Well, who would use a GUI on Linux anyway? What's wrong with you?
I know, right, Paul?
Says the person running KDE Plasma on his laptop in front of him, which is, it looks just like Windows.
Speaking of Plasma, I want to hear some of Mandy's stories.
How does that tie into Plasma?
It doesn't.
No,
Jim, come on, Jim.
That is incredibly kind of you, and I'm gonna say okay. You all are gonna start hearing the stuttering come out right now,
right.
Which is
okay.
Judge. You want okay? So,
on air we won't judge. After maybe, but no, I'm just kidding.
In private to you though,
yeah,
so we can all laugh about it.
You do. It's hilarious. Like so to the listeners, I do have aphasia and stuttering that comes out as I fatigue. So it's
and we
prominent.
and to your credit, Mandy, or not so much credit, we waited till the end till we said, "Hey, what about Mandy's stories?"
Yeah. Until her brain is completely
what a bunch of jerks.
Yeah. It's okay because I will try, but it doesn't work quite.
And you know what? You know what is amazing about this?
That's all.
The amazing part about this is Mandy realizes that she's doing it and immediately starts laughing.
Yeah,
like Mandy, that says so much about you as a human, and
sure.
I love you all the more for it.
Well, feel free to prompt us, prompt us, and we'll like your story number 4 is something I've been eyeing.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I figured that you would have started with that one, Paul. Like that's one right up your alley.
Right up my alley.
Then
I love hardware and just acquiring hardware. And man, you had the Raspberry Pi launch the M.2 hat, which has NVMe boot support and the ability to have an NVMe in your Raspberry Pi. Which this again, I think Bill falls in the category of because we can.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's.
Well, honestly, like that's really setting the stage for that Pi to be a a pretty good little computer, right? So I still don't have a 5. I haven't found a Pi 5. Let me make sure that I
Raspberry Pi 5. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So I still haven't found the right reason to do that. A lot of the, but
To
that's
drop
a
the
pretty cool.
$80. I mean, Raspberry Pi used to
I
be
know.
the really cheap
Mhm.
thing, but I think I personally believe the reason they went to slightly more expensive and faster hardware is because the user base demanded that
Yeah.
I want to do these more advanced things with it.
Right.
And I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. I have a Model 3B that I put Kali Linux on. I was like, okay, like it installs like great, but then I'm like, holy
Yeah.
crap, is it slow? Like I update
Yeah.
packages and I'm sitting
Mhm.
there like and I built one with a screen and like the whole thing, and I was totally this is gonna be like my utility hacking. I'm like, that is way too slow, right?
Yeah.
For
Yep.
like what I wanted to use it for. Now, if you
Yep.
trim down what was on there, probably fine for a very purpose built thing. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people went through that experience and demanded the Raspberry Pi be like, you need to make something faster.
And don't get me wrong, there is still absolutely applications for some of that type of stuff.
Mm.
For
Like
sure.
it was only
Oh yeah.
about a year ago that I took first iteration Raspberry Pis out of service. The one where you did
Mhm.
a video output via RCA.
Yeah, dude.
Mm.
Yeah.
I took those out of service I took a couple of those out of service about a year ago. They were still working. They'd work just fine for what I was doing with them and were practically indestructible. They were
Yeah,
in my attic, and attic gets to 120 degrees in the summertime, and those things were chugging right along without a heat sink or a fan on them without a problem.
Nope, they
Yeah,
didn't
isn't
need
that
it.
incredible?
Well,
Yep.
I was also hoping that someone would be able to explain more on this making use of the PCI Express lane. This is the first Raspberry Pi that makes use of that. I was hoping Jeff would be here because I didn't know if that was his thing too.
Yeah, so adding PCI Express to this thing is going to open a whole new world of possibilities. One, being able to add NVMe drives for expanded storage much faster, read write. But depending on the type of connector, you could potentially add a whole bunch of other type of stuff, not
Yeah.
just drives.
And that's that ribbon cable connector that you see on the hat,
Yep.
right? That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
PCI Express. And the GPIO pins is just an extension, so you can still get at
Yep.
the GPIO
Cool.
pins, right?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But $12 for these hats.
$12.
$12.
Yeah.
And then, storage is pretty cheap. I mean, I actually kind of looking at these for some like
Like a
could you create a
NAS, man.
NAS? Yeah, that's what a lot of
Yeah.
people are starting to do, that you can create a NAS
Yep.
with them. I still think it's kind of early to be. One article I read was like someone messing with it was like it's kind of early with like driver support and getting it all to work together. So I was kind of hesitant. But again, for the cost, like I'm looking at NVMe NAS devices on Amazon from like Asus Store is a brand that makes these NAS devices where you can have a number, depending on the model, a number of NVMe, and it creates a NAS. But they're like $1,000 to get a couple however many terabytes that is. Between 500, I want to say they start at, up to like 12 or 1400, depending on the capacity. And I'm looking at this because one of the things we want to do here in the studio is Larry and I can spend some time on Saturday moving some stuff around. But I have 500 DVDs, at least, probably more, of mostly kung fu movies in Asian cinema, and I want to rip all that on to a NAS. I think that's a fun project that's working its way up higher on my list, because many people are prompting me when I explain that. Everyone's like, so when are you going to do that so you can share it with me?
And dude, I've been telling you for years. Let me take
Harry's been
let me take a box of those at home.
No, you can't take it. You can't take it. They all got to stay here, because one thing I've learned is once they leave my possession, I don't. And not knock on you, Larry, but like,
I know.
just like track record history. As soon as one leaves my collection, it never comes back. Yeah,
and you know what? I don't. It's not me. I know it's not, because I am the same way.
Yeah, it's so if they all stay here, we can rip them all day long, and I think it'd be a fun project. And so I was eyeing.
Well, I mean, if we're here, we're going to be ripping them all day long.
Absolutely.
But not just the DVDs
and cloning DVDs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my coworkers have already given me hints. Like I mentioned this project, like all excited, and they told me about software and stuff like that. So we'll give you updates as I'm excited to take on that project. It has absolutely nothing to do with security, but I think it's really, really fun.
So
hey, I'm curious, that's not in the story. Sorry, Mandy, I interrupt him, but did you guys see the launch of the new iPad, the Pro that came with
I heard
out
about that.
with the
The M4?
M4? Yeah.
Yes.
The M4
Are
one.
do you
Yeah.
guys think that Mac OS is coming to the iPad?
Or the other way
Do you
around.
think
The other
it'll
way
matter?
around.
What do you mean?
iOS is coming to the
Mac.
the rumor has been for a long time that Apple computers will not run Mac OS anymore, that they'll run iOS, because it's a much more, one thing from a security perspective is it's a much more hardened OS, right? But that
Yeah.
is a detriment to the power users that want that flexibility.
Mhm.
So I was listening to one of the podcasts I listened to, they were talking about this, but I think it's a great point. I don't remember which one, I apologize. But so as more of a power user, I need to be able to install software that is not from Apple, right?
Right.
But when I
Mhm.
get an iOS device, I am stuck in your ecosystem. And that's one of the huge things. But the advantage of that ecosystem, the reason it can provide security, is because all the apps are vetted. So it's that double-edged sword of
No,
controlled and walled
it's
gardens
not.
versus open. Could go to a Linux user like myself. I know my
Wait, you
software.
use Linux? No.
Yeah, I use
you
Linux on my
just
desktop. Did I tell you I run Linux on my desktop?
Arch.
My software comes from all over. Not only does the software on Linux come from all over, the folks who package that are from all over, right? And how do you build a system of trust based on that
Well,
openness, right? That
but
security and trust comes from the closed and walled
I'll
garden.
I'll tell you though. So my history for really early on, I was always Windows and Linux,
Mhm.
and I was a very anti Apple person. And I told my brother, who was an Apple person, if I even consider buying an Apple computer, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to buy a shit ton of stock, because if they can convince me to be an Apple user, then it's going to, and let me tell you something, that
So how
stock has
many
done
shares
great.
do you own now in Apple
Right.
computer?
Well, yeah. So we can talk about that plenty, right? Like
Yeah,
it's done.
because you run on a Mac today, don't you?
Right. Yeah. So and I have when they moved to the Intel chips, that and OS 10, that was enough to make me consider it, and I made the move. I haven't been back.
Wow.
If
And
they were,
that makes you
Oh,
basically like old.
yeah, but I'm going to tell you something.
hey.
If I can't run Python and I can't run Go on,
Yes, right. Yeah.
I'm gone.
That's
I
exactly
can't. I
but
yeah.
the computing platform is amazing. From what I've heard about the M4 on the iPad, like the sheer computing power is like
Yeah.
absolutely
So
amazing.
so
But
is,
you only
so is the price.
Yeah,
yes,
so is
but
the
it's like
price.
buying a
Yeah.
laptop,
Yep.
except
Mhm.
you're stuck in the iOS ecosystem, and you've only got one USB-C port, right?
Well,
On the
I'm gonna say it right now. If I even consider to buy an iPad, so I don't have an iPad, I don't see the need for one. It would require to be running Mac OS, and I will buy more Apple stock.
right.
If they go the other route
Mhm.
than
They
what
go
you
the
guys are
other
saying,
right.
I'm
So
going again. Right.
and Bill, that would be like the end all be all of things that people in the Mac community have been asking for decades, is a
Right.
touchscreen Mac
Yep.
They built the
Mhm.
best laptop available, except they didn't make
and
it a true
touchscreens.
laptop. They made it a
Right.
large phone, basically,
But
which is a shame.
and they've been training people to use it for how many years?
Right.
When did they introduce the iPad Pro, the first 12-inch one? How many years back?
Well,
They've been
the
training
first
people to use it.
iPhone came out in 2007. iPad
Right,
was
but
like
yeah, but I
not
was
that
thinking about
far
the
after that, right? I mean, that's one of the geniuses
well, yeah, the
of Steve
original
Jobs,
iPad
right? Is that he
would
was like, everyone, you need a tablet, and I'm going to make an awesome tablet, and I'm going to tell you that that's what you need, right? That was
but when they
category
went to the
creation right there.
Pro, they started going against the laptop market.
Yes.
The other tablets weren't. Now with the Pro and now up to the M4 one, they are going after. This is their answer to a Chromebook.
Yeah.
If you
Yep.
think about it.
Yeah, really expensive Chromebook. Like Lee, you and I have
Well,
and I have a friend in common that doesn't have a work laptop. I mean, they do have a work laptop, but they don't use it very often. They use an iPad Pro to do all of their work stuff.
I just want to mention.
I've got a friend who does that. Another friend that does that as well. I mean, that's what he travels. And in fact, I travel with my iPad as much as possible because it's a lot lighter than carrying around
Yeah.
laptop.
And that's great until you need to install software that's not in the ecosystem, which there's like a million reasons,
That's
especially
the
for a
risk.
lot of what we do, is a million reasons
Yeah.
to do that.
Which kind of related, has anybody used parallels on Chrome?
Oh,
On a
Parallels on
Chromebook?
Chrome. No.
Mm-mm.
No.
no.
Parallels, it runs on Chrome OS.
Yeah, the
Whoa.
Wow.
on certain ones of the new enterprise Chrome OS, there's parallels now.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I have not.
I had not been paying attention to parallels because of issues at work using it.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Parallels was
haven't. I
one of the
haven't.
first, though. I remember.
Man,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
know. I just
Mhm.
remember back in 99, 2000 ish, I could run Parallels on OS2 Warp and run Windows inside of it.
Yep.
And that was like that
Mhm.
was amazing. That was amazing, right? And we
Yeah.
don't really hear much about Parallels. We hear about VMware
Mhm.
and a lot of the open
Right.
source ones, VirtualBox from Oracle, KVM. If you're brave on Linux and you want to do straight KVM, which is
Kimu.
Kimu,
Yep,
right?
Kimu's another one.
libvirt basically is
Yep.
the layer for that, which I'm told is awesome. I don't know. VMware runs great on Linux, so that's
Man,
Uh,
now I
really
kind of want to
workstation.
get a Chromebook and run Parallels
I
and
did.
run
That's
something like
why
that.
the Chromebook that I bought like 2 weeks ago was because of that. Was because
That's
of
cool.
wanting to be able to use the Windows apps.
Hmm.
And
Well,
all
I
that.
want to hear a report on how that goes, right? Like, 'cause that's actually kind of dope.
I would.
Right?
I
But
will
my
say, like, as hardcore as you can be with Linux and the other stuff, and sure, there's Wine and other emulators. Sometimes software only runs on Windows. Like, there's
Yep.
just certain circumstances, and again, it's why I have a Surface Book and a new device I'll talk about on a later episode that runs Windows, because sometimes, like, even with weird hardware hacking stuff that you're doing, that software only runs on Windows.
Yeah.
Or if there's a Linux alternative, it's really crappy.
Yep.
And probably Autopsy is one thing for
Yep.
forensics.
Yep.
And like, I didn't. One of my friends was like, "Dude, you want to analyze that with Autopsy?" He's like, "But don't try and run that on." And this is talking from like someone who's awesome at Linux. He's like, "Dude, don't try on Linux." I'm like, "Dude, that's a challenge." And I was like, "Holy crap, you are right. That was a horrible experience." The point where I forgot that I had installed it, and it was updating my distribution at home, and it was crapping out and failing because of some dependency for Autopsy, and I removed it, and then everything went fine. And I was like, wow, you were right for so many reasons, dude.
well,
Sometimes you just got to go with the flow, right? You got to think about what your goal is and kind of go with the flow. And it's the same thing like with your iPad or Parallels, your Chromebook,
Use the right
whatever
tool.
it is. You get right tool for the right job, right? Like, and when we talk about security related, you've got a goal to accomplish. I want to reverse engineer this thing. I want to play with this new technology from a security perspective. A lot of times it just comes down to, like, you know what? Use what's recommended. And Emba is a great example. Emba is a firmware analysis tool. And they're like, look, you need to run this distribution. I think
this version.
in this version, Ubuntu, whatever they
I think
recommended,
it was 2004.
2004, you need to run this. And again, I'm like, I don't believe you. And then I'm like, oh, that was horrible. And then I go back and I run what's recommended, and everything runs fine. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm either going to spend time debugging and troubleshooting this thing just so I can, like, say, look at me, I spent 40 hours and I got it to work, or I can reclaim my time and run it where the project wanted me to run it, and then do the analysis of the firmware, which is really what my goal is to be able to analyze firmware. So that's kind of like a PSA for folks out there.
Yeah,
Go
use
with
the
the
right
flow,
tool.
man. Yeah,
Use
right
the
tool for
to
right
do your
job. Go with the flow.
So this will be interesting one, Mandy. I'm reading the Parallels Desktop for Chrome OS, and it only mentions that you can upload a Windows VM image. Like, when do we get to do Linux in a VM? Because, well,
It runs Linux.
I know, but still,
It runs the Linux kernel.
yep.
But it's limited. There's a lot of things you can't do in Chrome OS.
Yeah, that's a whole different discussion about how there was a lot, some articles I saw this week too about
we can run a Mac VM on a Mac. Why couldn't we run a
Linux VM on
Chrome?
Linux. Yeah. But I did see some stuff about vendors running their own version of Linux and not backporting all of the fixes. And this is in the same context. And look, this is highly security related. Look, if you have your own Linux distro and kernel and think that you're going to be better at applying security fixes than the Linux kernel team, I can tell you I'm 20 plus years in Linux, and like don't do that. Don't do that. The Linux kernel developers are awesome at the Linux kernel and security fixes. So when they implement a fix, you should take that, put that in your distribution, and not try and play fancy games with it, because it's going to end badly for you. Linux kernel code is crossed how many millions of lines of code, and there's a huge dedicated team of people that have a lot of very specialized knowledge, and you want to take advantage of that. So like, and I saw a couple of articles this week about the pitfalls of doing it. Like, don't do that. Take the upstream Linux security fixes and do good things with them, not Debian type things with that stuff, because that's
Well, I'd like to mention Mandy's article number 11 to finish the discussion of legal issues, because this guy in Korea hacked into 400,000 homes, sold the recordings of the webcams, and see, people took him to court for that, as if there's something wrong with that. And he explained he was only doing it to promote security awareness, so that should have solved the problem.
For 0.1 Bitcoin per security event. Right.
Yeah. How exactly are you promoting security if you're making a profit off other people's webcam footage?
I tried to find his videos showing what he was doing and why. I couldn't find them.
Well, you know, one
probably because legally he can't release them, right?
Well, they're probably completely boring anyway.
Well, and mostly boring. Yeah, most security camera footage is pretty boring.
No, I think, Mandy, you're saying that he had videos of him discussing why he had done it, as opposed to the videos of stuff that he stole?
No, when he had where he had let the exploit be known, like where he had given the information on what precisely he was doing to gain access, which was, from my understanding, was made available previously, so that, because he's trying to say, hey, here's the problem, I gained access this way. And I figured that because he had done it that way, they would still be available somewhere.
So not the videos that he stole, but the video of him explaining how he had done it.
Not
the method.
Not the stuff he was criminally charging for. Not the
I gotcha.
pilfered video footage from people. No, I mean him saying he was a cybersecurity expert than what he had done prior to starting this odd streaming service.
Yeah, we're running short on time, but a quick segue, because I kind of teased this in the beginning. I want to make sure we cover it really quick.
DNSBomb?
Yeah, we share brains sometimes.
I want to hear about a pulsing DOS attack.
A pulsing DOS attack. DNSBombs is a new, practical, and powerful pulsing denial of service attack. Sam, tell us a little bit. I'm curious.
Yeah,
Sam, you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I remember that one. It was actually, the cool trick is you make a lot of requests that go to your DNS server, and you make your DNS server not respond until the TTL is about to finish. So it accumulates requests, sort of like loading a cannon, and then you finally respond all at once, blam, and you get a huge blast of requests. So that's how you get the powerful amplification. It's pretty clever.
That's where the pulse comes from.
I find it amazing that here we are sitting in 2024 talking about ways to use DNS in ways it was not intended, right? Like, it was created so long ago, and there's such like a storied history of attacks on DNS. Like, one of the ways I cut my teeth in this industry are attacks against DNS.
Yeah.
And to sit here today and talk about ways it can still be abused is just, it's mind-boggling.
The whole concept of a distributed database across multiple platforms is kind of insane, and it's just led to all these weird problems. It's never going to end. I mean, it is a bizarre idea. How could you have all these computers make different contributions and yet have one consistent database come out of it all? And the answer is it doesn't
And
really
it's
work.
such a simplistic concept, right? And often I find myself watching ways in which people are describing what DNS does.
Yeah.
In like, if you were to ask an LLM, explain to me as if DNS as if I was a third grader, and they're explaining, and the concept is like it's very basic, right? But when you start digging into it, you get into stuff like this, and again, the whole history of attacks against DNS, just
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
But DNS is so resilient. I mean, as a result,
That too, right?
it's incredibly complicated. It has a few flaws, but you can't take it down with anything for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sitting here having flashbacks to when I had, large hundreds of hosts, and they all had full local host files in them.
Right.
Yes.
Or we had the host table in NIS, and we could
The
look
days
it up there.
before
I didn't say
DNS,
plus, I
it was
said
a dark.
NIS.
Those were dark times, Lee. Dark
And-
times in the empire.
Oh, Lee, you brought me back. NIS. One of my first high-end sysadmin jobs was for a small hospital. And
Here we are again, old guys
and
smoking cigars and
and
drinking, talking about the old days.
And they didn't have Active Directory. Instead, they had Samba tied to NIS and YP.
Yeah.
Oh.
Man, we're face it, guys. We're experienced, well seasoned.
Well seasoned.
In other words,
well seasoned. And this is this episode is well seasoned now, so I'm going to bring it to a close.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.